Matt, you're all good. I think we can hear you. Feel free.
All right, finally, thank you. And thank you everybody for attending the webinar today. My name is Matt Sternberg. I'm the director of Parchment's K-12 team. We are very excited to be hosting this webinar with the NCAA. And you guys are going to find out a lot of information about preparing your student athletes for college, for the NCAA, and all the eligibility there. So quick rundown of the housekeeping items. This session is being recorded. So if you have to jump off or if you had a colleague that was planning on attending, don't worry, we'll send out the recording after this. And then please take advantage of the Q&A. All of your phone lines are muted and your computer audio is muted, your video is muted. So please use the Q&A portion to ask questions. We'll definitely be reserving time at the end to go through all the questions that you may have, and we expect you to have a number of questions. So please don't be shy about that. And then teammates from the NCAA and Parchment will be monitoring the chat throughout, so some of your questions will be answered throughout the webinar as well. So quick agenda for today. We're going to talk about the overview of the NCAA eligibility requirements, how to register and the required documentation, support for students throughout high school and how you can assist them in navigating their journey to participate in the NCAA. We'll also talk about resources to help you. And then obviously we'll reserve time at the end for question and answer. So please do use that chat feature. You can shout all you want. We can't hear you. I'm sure many of you have school bells going off around you because you're in the school building. Don't worry about that. But yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask questions throughout the webinar today. As we look at the people that you have on the webinar today, my name is Matt Sternberg. Again, I've been with Parchment for about 8 years. I'll be moderating today's webinar. And we've got Glenn Terry from the NCAA. He's going to handle the bulk of the presentation. For those of you that are wondering how Parchment and the NCAA actually kind of got together to host this webinar, we have a partnership where if you're a Parchment school and you use Parchment to send transcripts, you can actually use Parchment to send those transcripts to the NCAA Eligibility Center. And so we got together a few months ago and said, hey, wouldn't it be great if we partnered on a webinar like this? So for those of you that are familiar with Parchment, I'm sure many of you use Parchment today. You may direct your students to Parchment to send transcripts to the NCAA, and we'll save a little bit of time at the end to talk a little bit about Parchment. But the bulk of this presentation is going to be about the NCAA and preparing your student athletes. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Glenn, who's going to tackle all the issues that you came to hear about today. So without further ado, Glenn, I'll pass it over to you and you can introduce yourself and get into the content.
Matt, thank you. Truly appreciate you. Again, love to have the partnership with Parchment, and we are very glad that you guys are here today. My name is Glenn Terry. I am the Director of Outreach and Strategic Partnerships with the NCAA Eligibility Center. I've been with the NCAA for 14 years, and my role is I lead all outreach and education aspects as well as communication aspects with the Eligibility Center on making sure that our colleges, the high school community, and our students and families know what they need to know to make sure that those students are eligible to compete in NCAA Division I and Division II. Some of the things that we're going to go through today, we're going to talk about what the NCAA Eligibility Center is. The Eligibility Center is a unit in the national office, and their sole responsibility is to certify the academic and amateur credentials of student athletes. We want to focus on academic preparation. We want to focus on sports participation, the high school courses that they're completing, and provide excellent customer service to our customers to make sure that as the front porch to the NCAA student athlete experience, we are doing everything possible to make sure that our student athletes not only meet the NCAA initial eligibility requirements and amateurism requirements, but that they do so and have an excellent time as a student athlete through their 4 to 5 years of their educational experience. We're going to talk a little bit about registration. When we talk about registration, our registration website is eligibilitycenter.org. And when you go to that site, you have a choice. You can either register for a profile page or a certification account. The profile page account is a free account. It's for those students. We try to get them early, but it's for those 7th and 8th grade students to make sure that they know what they need to know, as they may be unsure about wanting to compete in NCAA Division I or Division II. We came up with the profile account to provide some information for those student athletes to make sure that they are aware. Some of the things that we talk about when a student registers with the profile page account, it roughly takes about 15 minutes, and we're going to send them information periodically. We're going to talk about information like hydration, nutrition, sleep and the ability to get proper rest, injury prevention, and we're also going to talk a little bit about study skills and academic achievement. We know that we can't sit and talk about grades and getting the best grades possible, because as student athletes, as those young people, they'll turn the volume off when we start talking about getting great grades and making sure that they have great test scores. So we try to mix some things in to make sure that we enhance their athletic skill set as well as their academic. Now, at any point in time that they have the free profile page, they can transition to a certification account. And a certification account basically means that they are interested in competing in NCAA Division I or Division II. There is a registration fee for domestic student athletes. It is $90. That is for the US, Canada, and all other US territories. And then for every other international country, the registration is $150. The one thing I will say is, before you want to take an official visit, or if you want to sign a national letter of intent, if you want to practice or compete at a Division I or Division II school, you must also be registered with the NCAA Eligibility Center and have a certification account. This is the dashboard of the registration page. When your student athlete registers and they complete registration, they will look up, and this will be the dashboard page. This page will let them know what they need to submit to us, as far as transcripts, test scores, any other information that may be on what we call their task list. A task list is something that we send out to your student athletes to let them know what we are needing to finish either their academic or their amateur certification. Up in the top right-hand corner, you'll see the name, and in blue, you'll see their NCAA ID. They will get that the minute that they register with the Eligibility Center. Just below that is their grad date, as well as the date as the year that they plan to enroll. You'll see that it says fall 2021 for John Doe. So we want to make sure that all of that information is correct, and if not, they can edit their account and make sure that they update not only their grad date, their address, their schools, but as well as their enrollment date. College admissions is a process in the Eligibility Center. This is a two-step process. I don't know how many student athletes I've talked to and basically asked them who's recruiting them. And they will let me know a myriad of schools that may be recruiting them and may be interested in them. The one question that I ask afterwards is, have you applied to that school, or have you applied to which schools have you applied to? And they'll get very tight-lipped and say, well, I haven't applied yet, or I don't know. In order to be accepted, you must apply to the school, the college or university that you plan on attending. If you don't apply, you cannot get accepted. This is the process. So I will let you know, please make sure that your student athletes apply to the college or university in which they're interested in attending. Number of questions is, what is an IRL? We will only certify students that are on an IRL. And what is an IRL? An IRL is what we call the institution request list. It is the way that the college or university lets us know that they are interested in your student athlete. So for instance, X and X State University must add John Doe to their institution request list. This will let us know that they are interested in John Doe and want us to perform an academic and amateur certification on John Doe. We will only do certifications for student athletes that are on a school's institution request list. If you are not on an institution request list, we will not perform an academic or amateur certification on your student athlete. Core courses. What are core courses? Very good answer. Well, a very good answer is they are courses that are on your school's list of approved courses. They fall into the disciplines of English, math, science, social studies, foreign language, or comparative religion or philosophy. When we start talking about comparative religion, one of the things that we're talking about is a world religion course, something that compares one religion to the other, Judaism to Christianity, or Catholicism to the Buddhist faith. We want to make sure that it provides a well-rounded comparative religion course. As far as math, it must be at the Algebra 1 level or higher, and it must be taught by a certified teacher, and it must be considered four-year college preparatory. Here's an easy way to find your school's list of core courses. If you go to eligibilitycenter.org/course list, you'll be able to seek out your school's course list. This provides great information for those schools that have a college night and want to let parents know and make sure that they are proactive in making sure that your students know the courses that they need to take to meet initial eligibility. So if you want to make sure that your parents are proactive, make sure that they have this. Eligibility.org/course list will provide those parents with the school's list of core courses, which they can compare to their student's transcript. Now we're going to talk about the Division I alternative standards. Over the course of the past year and a half, the Division I and Division II have undergone great changes due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In March of 2020, we realized that schools shut down and went to a virtual format and started using virtual education and online education. We wanted to make sure that we were doing all possible to make sure that those student athletes were able to meet the initial eligibility changes as they were unfolding. So what we did is we decided, we came up as a team and decided to sit and discuss and decide what the alternative standards would be for Division I and Division II. What I'm going to do is I'm going to discuss the alternative standards for Division I, and then I'll discuss the alternative standards for Division II. For Division I, there are 4 possible outcomes that you have. There is an early academic qualifier, a qualifier, an academic redshirt, and a non-qualifier. The early academic qualifier must present 14 core units in the required subject areas. They must also have a 3.0 in their core GPA. They will be certified prior to graduation. So these students are your academic high flyers. These are your honor students. So these young people will be certified prior to graduation. Here are the subject areas for those 14 core courses: 3 years of math, 3 years of English, 2 years of math, 2 of science, 2 of additional courses in English, math, or science, and 5 core courses in any additional course area. For Division I qualifier, they must meet a 16 core course standard. And after the 7th semester, they must also, prior to the 7th semester, they must also have 10 core courses before the start of the 7th semester, with 7 in English, math, or science. They must have a core course GPA of a 2.3 or higher and be able to submit proof of graduation once they graduate from high school. Here are the subject areas to be a qualifier. To be an academic redshirt, you must complete the same 16 core course units that you need to be a qualifier. However, you must at least have a 2.0 core GPA in those 16 core course units. and you must submit proof of graduation to the Eligibility Center once you graduate. Again, here are the core units that you must meet to be an academic redshirt. With an academic redshirt, you also get the ability to have your scholarship, and you get to practice in your first academic term. The ability to practice your second term is basically passing 9 semester hours or 8 quarter hours in your academic term at the college or university. You will not get the ability to compete your freshman year at all. And as a non-qualifier, you will not be able to receive your scholarship, you will not be able to practice, and you will not be able to compete your freshman year. These are young people that have not either met the core course standard or met the core GPA standard through high school by the time they are certified and graduate high school. Standardized test scores. What's different about the NCAA academic requirements? The main thing that's different is the NCAA Eligibility Center is not requiring standardized test scores for student athletes to be eligible to compete. We have suspended the SAT and the ACT for the spring 20, all of 2021, all of 2022, and for those students that enroll in the 22-23 academic years. So for your juniors, they may be required to take an SAT or ACT. One thing that we did receive is that the NCAA Test Score Task Force, which was a task force that was put together to sit and discuss if the SAT or the ACT should be a part of the initial eligibility process, has made a recommendation that the SAT and the ACT not be a part of the initial eligibility process. This recommendation must go to a vote. So until we receive a vote, we will then wait to determine if the SAT or the ACT will be a part of the initial eligibility process. One thing that I must say is the SAT or the ACT may not be a part of the standardized process for COVID-19. However, colleges may require this for admission, and some academic scholarship programs may require these test scores to receive scholarships. So please check with the college or university and/or any scholarship programs to see if standardized test scores are still required. One thing that we need to talk about is the Division I core course time limitation. The Division I core course time limitation says that you have 4 years or 8 semesters to complete your core course requirement. 4 years meaning your freshman year, sophomore, junior, and senior year. With that, you must graduate on time. So if your school graduates on June 1st, you must graduate on June 1st with your graduating class. With COVID-19, we've amended that to make it a little bit easier for student athletes. For those 2020, 2021, or 22 grads, or those students that delay enrollment and will enroll in the 22-23 academic year, once they start their 7th semester, they may take up to 6 courses before full-time enrollment to meet the core course time limitation. So, as an example, if your student athlete takes 4 core courses their senior year, they will have the ability to take 2 core courses prior to full-time enrollment. If they take 3 core courses in their senior year, they will have the ability to take a +3 core courses to meet the initial eligibility standards. Thus, we will allow them to use up to 6 core courses from the start of their 7th semester or senior year and to full-time college enrollment. Here's an example of a schedule for your student athletes. If your student athletes are taking 1 math, one science, one English, and one social studies every year for 4 years. 4 times 4 is 16. There is no way that they can possibly miss out on meeting the academic standards for Division I or Division II. Most student athletes, most schools require foreign language, 2 years of foreign language to meet graduation requirements, and most colleges require 2 years of foreign language for admissions requirements. So with those 16 plus those 2 years of foreign language, most students are graduating with somewhere around 18 core courses. It isn't that difficult. If you point out if they take one math, one science, one English, and one social studies every year for 4 years, they should be able to meet the core course standards for Division I and Division II initial eligibility. Let's talk about the Division II alternative standards. There are 3 possible academic outcomes, one being an early academic qualifier, which we will certify prior to graduation, the qualifier, which we will certify at graduation, and the partial qualifier, which will be certified at graduation also. The early academic qualifier must complete at least 14 units in the required subject areas, and they must at least have a 2.5 core GPA, meaning the GPA in those core course units. They will be certified as an early academic qualifier prior to graduation and will receive the ability to receive their scholarship, practice, and compete their freshman year. Here are the subject areas for the early academic qualifier. The academic qualifier will be certified after graduation, and they must complete 16 core course units and earn a core course GPA of a 2.2 in those core courses and submit proof of graduation to the Eligibility Center once they graduate. And these are the subject areas that the students must meet to meet their core course requirements. With that, they'll be able to receive their aid, they'll be able to practice, and they'll be able to compete their freshman year. And all other student athletes that do not meet the qualifier status will be deemed a partial qualifier. This came out in January of 2021 when Division II voted to do away with the non-qualifier standard. So any student athletes that do not meet the Division II qualifier standard will be deemed a partial qualifier. They will be able to receive their scholarship and they will be able to practice their freshman year. However, they must submit proof of graduation prior to once they graduate high school. Again, standardized test scores are excluded from the initial eligibility process. However, if your student athletes are trying to receive academic scholarships or need-based scholarships, they may need to submit test scores to the university for admissions and/or scholarship purposes. As well, the NCAA Test Score Task Force has made the recommendation to do away with the SAT or the ACT score, and that will be voted on in the legislative process. These are some of the flexibility options that we've provided as far as COVID-19 is concerned. We wanted to make sure that student athletes that went through COVID-19 were able to meet the initial eligibility standards and wanted to make those initial eligibility standards attainable for student athletes. Like I said, once COVID hit in March of 2020, we worked tirelessly with our NCAA leadership to come up with standards that student athletes could meet and that prepared them for the academic rigors on a college campus. Here are the QR codes for our Division I academic requirements and our Division II academic requirements. These are the traditional academic requirements and sliding scales as they stand outside of the COVID-19 environment. Feel free to take out your phone and scan these QR codes as as information becomes available, and we want to make sure that we are able to get this information out to you so that your student athletes know what they need to know and the families know what they need to know to meet the initial eligibility requirements. Division three does not utilize the NCAA Eligibility Center. Division three does not have athletic scholarship dollars, so all scholarships are either academic based or need-based aid. So if your student athlete is granted admission to the Division three college or university of their choice, they are academically eligible to compete their freshman year. What I'd like to do is I'd like to shift and talk a little bit about distance or e-learning programs. When in March of 2020, we realized that schools went to e-learning programs or online learning. So we wanted to make sure that we covered online learning for your schools and for your districts. For the spring of 2020 through the spring of 2022, the NCAA is not going to require a review of your distance or e-learning programs in response to COVID-19. We realize that your schools and your districts have been through a great deal. We realize that your students may still be taking distance or e-learning courses, but those courses will meet the initial eligibility standards through the 2022 academic year. This is going to apply to all of your student athletes, whether your freshman student athletes had to go through online learning or your sophomore, junior, or senior student athletes had to go on through online learning. We are going to certify those student athletes with that online learning course, whether they receive grades or pass fail, and make sure that they are able to meet the initial eligibility standards for Division I and Division II. One thing that we wanted to let you know is that through the COVID-19 environment, we realized that some of your student athletes were at home and they were taking online courses on the computer. Taking online or hybrid courses on the computer does not mean that your students are homeschooled. We realized that they were at home and they were learning, but it does not mean that they are homeschooled. So please, as your students register with the Eligibility Center and create that certification account, please have them list your high school as the high school that they attended, even though that they were home, and please don't have them list that they were homeschooled. Speaking of homeschooled, we will be allowing COVID students to meet the COVID-19 academic waiver criteria for homeschool students. We have the 2021-22 homeschool toolkit, and it is a great document. It is a great informational resource. Please download this if you have if you know of homeschool students, to make sure that they know what they need to know to meet the initial eligibility standards for Division I and Division II. Amateurism. What is amateurism? Amateurism is the sports participation area where when students register, they're asked what sport that they compete in, and we will inquire about their sports participation through high school and through their club team. When they get those questions, we ask them to be completely truthful in their answers. We want to make sure that they are an amateur in nature, that they have not taken pay for play. And for those student athletes that go through the amateurism certification process, 94% of those students do not need to be asked additional questions, and they will meet and be certified for final amateurism. Name, image, and likeness. This is brand new. Some of the things that we wanted to talk about were name, image, and likeness. The NCAA is absolutely pleased that student athletes have the ability to earn compensation from their name, image, and likeness. But we want to make sure that we are following the proper legislation. So if your state has legislation on name, image, and likeness, we will follow your state's legislation on name, image, and likeness. However, if your state does not have legislation on name, image, and likeness, like the state of Indiana, we will follow the college that your student is headed to and their policies and procedures on name, image, and likeness. So again, if your state has legislation on name, image, and likeness where your student lives. So if your student is attending high school in Texas, Texas has legislation on name, image, and likeness. We will follow that state's legislation. However, if your state does not have any legislation on name, image, and likeness, we will defer to the campus or the school where your student is headed to follow those policies and procedures on name, image, and likeness. If your students have questions about their initial eligibility, or if they have general questions on what they need to do, they can contact our customer service center. Our customer service center is open 8:30 to 5 Monday through Friday, and they can call them and get answers to their questions. It is 877-262-1492. That's 877-262-1492, or they can follow the eligibility on our social media sites, on Facebook at NCAAEC, on Twitter at NCAAEC, or on Instagram at Play College Sports. Here are our QR codes to go on ahead and follow us. Go on ahead and take your phone out, and go ahead and follow us. We'd love to have you. We'll provide great information. We provide timely information. Our communication staff is absolutely the best in the business, and we'll make sure that your student athletes are informed about everything from registration to certification and everything through the recruiting process. Some proactive reminders that I can provide as your student athletes are being recruited, when they register with the Eligibility Center, make sure that they're sharing their NCAA ID with the schools and the coaches that are recruiting them as they enter their senior year. October 1st, if they're enrolling in the fall, April 1st, if they are enrolling in the fall, they need to request final amateurism. If they are one of those students that is graduating early and enrolling in the winter spring on October 1st or after, they need to request their final amateurism. And also know that as a counselor, we need you to upload your transcripts. You can do so through Parchment if you are a Parchment school. Upload those final high school transcripts with proof of graduation, and know that if your student athlete has a documented education impacting disability, there are considerations given to those students. So you can click the link below and find out what those considerations are for those student athletes with education impacting disabilities. Here are some of our resources. One of the ones that I went through feverishly was the COVID-19 FAQ. That right now, as we move through the 21-22 academic year, will be probably the most comprehensive document that we have to really talk about what students need to do to meet the academic standards for COVID-19 as we go through this pandemic. But the Guide for the College-Bound Student Athlete is truly the most comprehensive document that we have. It is 40 pages of everything from registration to certification. It provides everything from the start to the finish, including the recruiting process and recruiting terms. And it even has questions that you should ask coaches as you are being recruited and looking for the college or university of your choice. With that, I'm going to go back to Matt. Matt, are there any questions that we have, brother?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions. One of the big questions that kept coming up was around the ACT and SAT scores. So which classes are currently required to have an ACT or an SAT test score? And I think classes, obviously the graduating classes.
So if we're looking at classes right now, the class of 2023, we haven't really discussed what the SAT or ACT scores are going to be. We are still up in the air as we determine the different variants of COVID-19 and what's going to happen in the future. We are in the process of continuing those discussions and talking with our staff about what's going to happen in the future. But as we look at the class of 2023, our hope is to go back to a traditional format of test scores with SAT, ACT, core courses, and a core course GPA.
And Glenn, going back to a few other questions that we get periodically, could you review the registration fees for a certification account?
Absolutely. For for domestic student athletes, it is $90. And for international student athletes, meaning students outside of the US, excluding Canada, and also excluding all of the US territories, the international fee is $150.
How does a student get on a school's IRL?
Institution request list. Great question, sir. The institution request list is a list that the school keeps. It is as coaches are talking to their compliance staff, they are adding kids that coaches are asking the compliance coordinators to add student athletes that they are interested in. So if you are reaching out to a coach, if a coach is reaching out to you and they are contacting you and letting you know that they are interested in you and interested in you visiting or coming to campus, one of your questions may be, have you added me to your school's institution request list? That is the way that we verify our student athletes. If those student athletes have been added to an institution request list, we will perform an academic or amateur certification on those student athletes. Without being on an institution request list, we will not perform an academic or amateur certification.
Got it. We've got a few more questions here. When does a student need a certification account?
Great question, sir. We'd like to have students have a profile page account in the 7th or 8th grade. As they are transitioning to their freshman year, we would hope that they would transition their profile page account to a certification account. At that time, that's when your grades start going on your transcript, and we start keeping tabs on your grades and your credits. So as you start the desire to want to play Division I and Division II, hopefully that begins in your freshman year. We would hope that you would transition to a certification account either late your freshman year or bright and early your sophomore year.
What year do grades start to count towards Eligibility Center certification?
As I told you before, it starts right in the 9th grade. However, I will say this: if you are taking 9th grade courses in the 8th grade, like Algebra 1 or Spanish, and those classes are added to your high school's transcript with grade and credit, we will utilize courses taken in the 8th grade, 9th grade courses taken in the 8th grade to certify your student athlete. But traditionally, it is the minute that you hit 9th grade, these classes will go on your transcript, and we will utilize those courses to meet your initial eligibility certification for Division I and Division II.
Glenn, you talked about a student's NCAA ID number. Where is that and how do they find it?
Student's ID number can be found on that dashboard page when they sign into their Eligibility Center account. It's usually found in the top right-hand corner, and it's outlined in NCAA blue. So you would be able to locate it in that top right-hand corner in NCAA blue, and it'll say NCAA ID, and it'll give you a 10-digit number. That is your student ID.
So if I'm going to go on an official visit, do I have to be certified beforehand?
Do you have to be certified? No, you must be registered with the Eligibility Center. We're going to perform a certification once you graduate high school, but you must be registered with the Eligibility Center with a certification account to be able to take an official visit to a Division I or II college or university.
Glenn, can you explain what a dead period is again? What's a dead period?
A dead period. Well, during COVID-19, we went through a dead period. A dead period means that you cannot go onto a college campus and coaches cannot call you and contact you during a dead period. It basically keeps you off of the college campus to ensure that you have time to make the best decision possible for you, and keeps coaches from contacting you, trying to sway you to attend their college or university at that time.
How do I add a core course to our school's account?
Adding a core course is basically logging on to the high school portal. And once you log on to the high school portal, you will find you can add core courses in the high school portal. There's a tutorial on the high school portal resources page, which outlines adding a core course. So if you log on to your school's account in the high school portal, you'll be able to follow the tutorial to add a core course to your high school's list of core courses.
All right, last question for you, Glenn. If there's no others, I haven't seen any others come through. How do I update the contacts for my school's Eligibility Center account?
You'll again do that in the high school portal. Once you log into the high school portal, if you are no longer the contact, you can actually update the contact to someone on your high school staff that will be responsible for inquiring about student athletes and or submitting documents, transcripts for your student athletes as they graduate and as they approach their senior year.
All right, thank you, Glenn. Appreciate it. I know that I learned a lot of information. I wish I could have used all this and been a good enough high school athlete myself. You know, playing intramurals was a lot easier. So, but I learned a lot. Thank you so much for all the information. I'm sure people learned a lot on today's webinar.
Matt, thank you. Just want to thank you all for attending. Wanted to let you guys know academic achievement creates opportunities. Don't be afraid to challenge your student athletes to meet and exceed their academic expectations. You'll be surprised. Best of luck. Thanks so much.
And again, we want to thank the NCAA for being on this webinar with us. And like I mentioned before, Parchment partners with the NCAA Eligibility Center. So many of you use Parchment today to send transcripts for your students and alumni to colleges and universities for the purpose of admission. And you can also send transcripts to the NCAA Eligibility Center through Parchment. So if you don't do that and you're still mailing transcripts for your students or alums, or if you just feel like there needs to be a better way to send transcripts and take your transcript requests, please reach out to us. We'd love to talk a little bit more about the needs of your school or school district. My contact information is on the screen, and so please don't hesitate to reach out. My last name's kind of a lot to handle. If you can't remember all that, you can always reach out to us at info@parchment.com. So again, thank you to the NCAA. A few quick recap notes here. We will be sending out a recording of this presentation, and we'll also be sending out some documentation as well. So without further ado, I think we can wrap up, but thank you to the NCAA and everybody who could take time out of their busy day to be here. Appreciate everybody, and we'll talk to you all real soon.